What's up NBA fans, Dom2K on the mic, and I'm gonna have some fun with this video because lately in the NBA season, the drama going on off the court has actually been more suspenseful than what's going on the court, and many people could tell you that because we've pretty much got the NBA finals figured out already, but apparently there's a few teams that don't have each other figured out already, and it's making for some interesting headlines. If you haven't been living under a rock for this entire week, you pretty much know the situations I'm talking about. You got LeBron James in Cleveland basically really upset with the roster right now because he doesn't feel they're good enough. In particular, he wants a playmaker or a backup point guard. Over there in New York, they're trying to make up for some really bad decisions and they're trying to give Carmelo to basically anybody who wants him. And then down in Chicago, it's finally coming to a head where three players who should have never been on the same team are pretty much, I wouldn't say going back and forth, it's over by now, but Rondo had some things to say on Instagram, Jimmy Butler and Dwayne Wade took to the media, and I'm basically just gonna weigh in on all three situations because I have some things to say about them. So starting with the Chicago Bulls, they're having a very average season. They're just a flat 500 team after bringing in Rondo, Jimmy Butler, and Dwayne Wade over the summer. And basically what happened here is Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler are apparently not happy with the effort coming from the other guys, and they said things to the media like they want to play with people who care. And to me, it sounds like Dwayne Wade is prepping Chicago for his departure because I know that he's only on a one-year deal, so he can go ahead and move on after the season and do what he chooses with his career. Now, the interesting thing about this is since they took to the media, Rondo also took to the media to vent his frustrations about Wade and Butler taking their problems to the media. Yeah, I don't know, it was a little bit weird, but if you saw the Instagram post, Rondo basically talked about how all his veterans, back referring to the Boston Celtics, they wouldn't have went to the media, they would have worked things out, they taught basically winning habits to the rest of the team. My take on this entire thing is that this was just something that was destined to happen, okay? Rondo, Wade, and Butler are three players that really did not need to be on the same team because of their play styles. There was just no way for this to really ever be successful. And this frustrating situation that they're in where they're just an average team and Dwayne Wade isn't happy with it, and it was kind of set up to happen because in my opinion, Chicago really did a cash grab move this summer. So instead, they traded Derrick Rose this summer. They went ahead and moved him on to the New York Knicks, and that told a lot of people that the Bulls were ready to rebuild. Instead of trying to rebuild, they went ahead and signed two more big names. The problem is, for a team that should have been rebuilding, it made no sense to go out and get Rondo and Wade. First of all, Dwayne Wade is 35 years old now, he just turned that age. He's over the hill, he's not going to be around for much longer, so you can't build with him. And Rondo, you don't put him with Dwayne Wade and Jimmy Butler because, as I said earlier, none of them can shoot. So now you're left with a team of guys who apparently care about winning, but they have no way to win because there's just no shooters on that roster. And as a product of the losing they're doing and being such an average team, you get what we had in the media last week where Wade and Butler are going at the team, and I guess you wouldn't say the team is going back at with them, it's more just Rondo coming back at him. But this situation was just primed to happen in my opinion. I've seen a lot of Chicago fans who are very upset with the management because they feel like I feel, you know, they just went and grabbed names this summer instead of actually trying to rebuild, because rebuilding does not sell tickets unless you're in a market like Los Angeles or New York or some tourist area where you're always going to sell tickets. You know, you don't want to be Chicago and not have a good team on the floor, not at least have some names. So it really kind of seemed like a greedy move from management side, and now they're dealing with the consequences. In any event, this whole situation is done with, okay? Rondo responded to Wade and Butler. Wade said he's moved on from it. Everyone said what they had to say. Now the team is just going to ride off into mediocrity and basically disband this summer, whatever they decide to do, but I know Wade won't be there after this year. That brings us to the situation going on in New York that basically gets more interesting by the day, and this is basically the New York Knicks shopping Carmelo Anthony every day, trying to give him to whoever will take him. Now this is a complicated situation because Carmelo Anthony has a no trade clause in his contract, so if Melo doesn't like the trade situation that they come up with, he doesn't have to take it. The thing is, what makes it even more complicated is that at Carmelo's age and the stage that he's at in his career, only a couple of teams really make sense for him to go to and accept a trade for. So one of them was Cleveland, which I think he would have accepted playing with LeBron James, and Cleveland was very wise not to take on that contract, not to trade Kevin Love for him. I think they made a good decision in not doing that. After Cleveland, when you look at what's realistic in terms of salaries and contending in a situation that would make sense for Melo, you're basically down to the Clippers and Boston. And this is something that I meant to mention in my video about Chris Paul, which was my last video. I didn't mention that one way I could see Chris Paul staying on the Clippers is if they were able to get Carmelo Anthony. I think that changed everything. And the thing about the Knicks right now, they are basically trying to give Carmelo Anthony away because I don't know if you heard, but supposedly the Knicks are trying to offer him to the Clippers, and they said we don't need Chris Paul, we don't need Blake Griffin, and I also heard them say they don't need DeAndre Jordan. So then it's like, okay, you start looking down their roster, what else could they give you that's actually worth Carmelo Anthony? I mean, he's not total trash yet. What this tells me is that the New York Knicks are trying to make up for the mistake they made this summer, and they made a huge mistake by trying to slap together a contender instead of building around Kristaps Porzingis. See, it was a terrible thing that they did trying to get Derrick Rose and Noah, because those are two players that, even though they're not really terribly old, they're clearly past their best days, okay? Their best days are behind them. Derrick Rose, the MVP, is not coming back, but they figured if they could get them and they could play at a decent level with Carmelo, this team could make some noise in the East. Well, that hasn't happened, because after they got Jennings, Rose, and Noah, they didn't fill the roster out with anything else. There's some guys on there that I can't even name. So basically the Knicks are in a situation where they took a risk this summer and it totally backfired, because what they should have been doing is looking for a way to move Carmelo a lot earlier. They have a young star in Porzingis, okay? He showed a lot of promise in his rookie year. You know that he's going to be a player you can build around for the future. Carmelo Anthony has had a couple of knee surgeries now. He's getting up there in age. The first move this summer should not have been trying to slap together a contender made out of older veterans on top of Kristaps Porzingis. What they should have been doing is building off of him, because he can lead your franchise one day. Now that New York's management realizes that, they're trying to give Carmelo Anthony away to whoever will take him right now, because they realize Kristaps is the future. We need to go ahead and move Melo. And the two destinations on the table right now, I mean, they kind of make sense. So it definitely makes sense for the Clippers, because as I was talking about in the Chris Paul video, they need that third guy to win an NBA championship, especially with the Warriors more than ever. If they plan on taking Lob City, because I mentioned that I believe that that's going to be over by the end of the season, if Chris Paul and Blake Griffin are to stay with the Clippers, they need to go ahead and get this third guy. So if I'm the Clippers, I'm moving whatever I need to do to go ahead and get Carmelo to come play with this team. They can contend this year and for a few more years after that. They're in a position where they could use Carmelo. Now for the Celtics, I'm not so sure they want to make that move. Here's the thing, I'm a Celtics fan myself. I'm not one of the people who hates on Carmelo and says he's fat and overrated and a cancer. I know a lot of people have said that about Melo. That's not something I say. But what I do say is that the Celtics have accumulated a bunch of assets over the years. They're a young team. They have a core building. Of course, they can't challenge Cleveland yet. And would getting Carmelo Anthony right now help them challenge Cleveland? It definitely would, because they need a guy like that in order to make the finals anytime soon. But I see it as a very short-sighted move to trade your assets for Carmelo Anthony. I feel like Boston needs to be targeting players like Jimmy Butler, DeMarcus Cousins. They need to get some young and up and coming stars is what they need there. You don't need someone who's, he's had a lot of surgeries, his best days are behind him. I think there's a better use of your assets than Carmelo Anthony if you're the Celtics. And that's what makes the Knicks position even harder, because if the Boston management feels the way I do, that means that the Knicks would give Carmelo happily to the Celtics, but the Celtics, maybe they don't actually want to pull the trigger on that trade. Then it leaves you with the Clippers, because again, you have to remember, Carmelo has to accept the trade wherever he goes. He has all the leverage here. He says yes or no. So he's only going to say yes to so many places, and at this point he's only going to say yes to potential contenders. That makes the list very small. Then you have to work on salaries. Doesn't make sense for the other team. They're going to have a hard time moving him. I think if Carmelo Anthony does move, it's going to be the Los Angeles Clippers. And last but certainly not least, let's go ahead to Cleveland, where the king has spoken. He is pissed off with his roster. He wants a backup point guard, a playmaker. He wants something else for Cleveland, because they're not good enough to win an NBA championship right now in his eyes. Those are straight from his words. Does not think they're good enough to repeat. Now, this has created a frenzy among people who didn't like LeBron James to begin with, because one of the biggest knocks on LeBron's career is people's always said that, oh, to win he needs all these all-stars and he has these hand-picked rosters, and people kind of dislike LeBron James for that. And this definitely fed the fire. Now, I'm gonna say I agree with the fans here, and I agree with LeBron James. Let me explain why. First of all, I agree with a lot of what the fans have said, because LeBron James put the Cavaliers in this position, okay? Ever since he's came back to Cleveland, he's had the front office. They basically bow to whatever he says, okay? If he says jump, they say how high. So this has resulted in them having the highest payroll in the league. They're in some crazy number with the luxury tax, and they're at a point where they have no more leverage. There's nothing left that they can actually do. So I don't know if you guys noticed this yet, but every single year Cleveland has gotten a steal, okay? And it's pretty much saved their season. So in the first season, they were able to get J.R. Smith, Iman Shumpert, and Mozgov for basically nothing. I don't even remember what they traded, but it didn't hurt them. The next season, they were able to trade something and get Channing Frye. That was a very good addition. He stretched the floor. This season, they were able to give Mike Dunleavy, who they weren't using, up for Kyle Korver, who could be a very important piece. But it's come to a point now where there's nowhere else they've done everything they can do. They can't give up any more, nothing pieces and actually get something in return. Now it's a point where they basically have to give up something to get something. Tristan Thompson is on this this ridiculous like $80 million contract that LeBron James clearly persuaded Cleveland to do, because back when it didn't look like they were going to sign Tristan, LeBron put pressure on him with that post to social media saying get it done. Okay, they got it done. This Cleveland team has done everything for LeBron James to the point now he has spot-up shooters everywhere. You've got Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love, who I don't care what you say, they're two all-star caliber players. A backup point guard or a playmaker right now is not going to solve Cleveland's problem within what they can actually do, okay? Realistically, with what Cleveland can do as far as salaries and actually trading pieces, there's really nothing they can do to actually make that roster better right now. And if they did get a backup point guard right now, that's not going to fix the problems these guys have been having lately. If you go look at Cleveland's game log, the problem is these teams they've been losing to, they're giving up in the high 100s every single night. Defense is their problem right now. This team is not playing defense. I completely fail to see where a playmaker or a backup point guard is going to solve those problems right now. That's not the issue. And for LeBron to take it to the media and start crying about how they need a playmaker or a backup point guard, that's where even more issues get created, because you say, okay, even if you do really want a backup point guard that bad, that's something you go talk to management about. That's not something you need to go into the media about, because that just makes everything worse, because nobody feels sorry for this team. For the last few years, we've watched them add piece after piece to the point where they pretty much have the perfect team built around him, and there's just no more leverage to do anything. The only players that the Cleveland Cavaliers have left that they would dare ever trade is Kay Felder, James Jones, DeAndre Liggins, possibly Richard Jefferson, Jordan McRae, and that's it. That's the only trade bait you have left. And I'm sorry, I don't see another team out there wanting to give up anything of any kind of value for any one of those players. But let me get to the point where I do agree with LeBron James on. This roster is not good enough to go back to back. Are they good enough to come out of the East? Of course they're good enough to come out of the East, okay? Even with this losing streak, the sad part about the East is that Cleveland, in most people's mind, is still the favorite to come out. I don't think anybody seriously thinks they're losing before the NBA Finals. But are they good enough to beat the Warriors? Hell no, they're not good enough to beat the Warriors in the series. Nobody really is. And that's LeBron James. That's where this anger's really coming from, that he's not going to tell anybody. You guys know as well as I know, players are extremely politically correct. They hardly ever say what they're thinking, and what LeBron James is really looking at right now, and what's really got him shitty, is he's looking at the Warriors that have 4 All-Stars now. 2 of those guys are superstars, another 2 guys are pretty much the 2 best shooters in the league, and at this point in the season, they basically clicked into the All-Star team that everyone said they were going to be when the season started. So are the Cleveland Cavaliers good enough to beat them? No, they're not. LeBron knows it, everyone knows it. But the problem with that is that going to the media doesn't help, because as I've already shown with Cleveland's roster, there's nothing else you can do this season to make yourselves talent-wise better than Golden State. It's not happening. And I get it. I mean, deep down, I understand why LeBron is pissed about that, because, I mean, it was a pretty unfair thing that Golden State did this year. I mean, they were 73-9. They added another MVP to a 73-9 roster. Granted, they did give up the bench, but they still got pieces back. They were still able to sign JaVale McGee, David West. They have that other guy, I believe his name is Eon Clark, who's coming off the bench right now, who's playing really well. So they didn't really even lose that much by signing Kevin Durant this year, and they're just a team that nobody can really touch, and LeBron kind of sees that. But sometimes life is not fair, and a playmaker or a backup point guard, that's not the difference between beating Golden State in a series right now, and it's also not the difference between giving up 110 points a night. According to LeBron, he's 33 years old without a lot of time to waste, and to me that signals that he's not happy with this roster. So LeBron, my message to you is, if you really want to beat this Golden State super team before you retire, call up Chris Paul, Carmelo, and your guy Dwayne Wade. You guys get on a conference call, figure out how you guys can get on the same team, because I agree with you, Cleveland's not beating them this year. Anyways, those are all my thoughts on all the drama going on this week. It's pretty sad that the drama is more suspenseful than the actual season itself, but that's what we got to work with right now, and situations just seemingly keep on piling on top of each other. It's actually sort of like an episode of Dragon Ball Z, because now you're kind of wondering what's going to happen from this point on going into the summer, where a guy's going to go. You know, it's just suspenseful in that respect. Let me know what you guys think about all the drama in the comment section, and I want to know specifically, do you think Carmelo Anthony is actually going to be traded? I think the Clippers, they got a jersey with his name on it, and I hope that they work that out, because that would make the West and the NBA a whole lot more interesting. I'm Dom2K. Like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. Hit the bell next to my name if you want to receive notifications for my videos, or else you won't get them at all. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.